Hello, I'm Avery or Hazel or Kylie. You can just pick one, I don't care.
Hello, I am Lily.
And welcome to the From the Closet podcast, special episode 100.
It's the 100th
Today,
episode! Yay!
today Lily and I will be discussing our opinions on the top 10 best and top 10 worst movies we've covered. We haven't really discussed what is on each of our lists beforehand, so it's
We
going
have
to
a
be interesting.
general idea.
We have a general idea, but it's going to be interesting to compare.
Definitely.
So obviously there will be spoilers ahead for potentially any movie that we've covered.
Except for Sinbad.
I mean, I
If you
guess.
haven't seen Sinbad, you're safe.
Yeah, you're probably safe. You can join us next week for Phineas and Ferb the movie, Candace Against the Universe, and Agent Carter Season 1. Oh god, they're probably, oh god, I hate to say it, but there's probably going to have to be like a bunch of Just Watch links below in a paste bin. Because we may not even have a, we might actually have to use a paste bin link because there might not be enough space in the description.
Characters.
Yeah. But yeah, it will have all the places. Just Watch will have all the bleh. The Just Watch link for each movie will have links to all the places that you can rent, purchase, or stream each movie that we talk about in this episode. Also in the description.
If I get around to it, and you're on YouTube, you may be looking at this nice thing I did, where it's just a bunch of question marks until we're actually covering the movie.
I might take care of. Yeah, I might take care of it. Who knows? We'll see. Also in the description, you will find a link to our Patreon where you can get access to episodes of this show early, as well as early access to episodes of our sister show, Off the Shelf, which is about books. That show is exclusive to YouTube and Patreon, by the way. Also, you will be able to vote on future episodes of this show on our Patreon. Also, in the description below, you will find a link to Anchor.fm, which itself contains links to every platform that this podcast is on, as well as links to our Instagram and Twitter, where you can be notified when we release a new episode. So, with that being said, all right, so I know we were both planning on starting off with our number 10 worst, but who should go first?
I want to go first because it's kind of out there, you know.
All right, so that would mean that would mean that we're eventually going to end on my number one best.
Yes, that'd be true.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
And I just want to put it out there that this is probably not how I rated the movie when we first covered it. But upon thinking, my top 10 worst is Good Burger.
You know, that's fair. There was so much with that movie that baffled me. I was like, who made this? And then later, after we'd already recorded our episode, I found out that the person that made this movie was Dan Schneider.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah. So that kind of explains why it was weird.
There's just so much weird about this movie, and if I want to go on a crack trip, I'd rather be on The Last Unicorn.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So for my number 10 worst, I have Lady and the Tramp.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's actually interesting how it's only top 10 or 10.
Yeah. So the way I see it, Lady and the Tramp, it had quite a few racist elements, but also the main hook of the story is supposed to be Lady and the tramp's romance, but it has no development at
Mhm.
all. The only scene that has any real worth in development for their romance is the spaghetti scene, and that is pretty much the only scene people tend to remember about that movie, unless they also remember the racist cats scene.
Yeah.
So
The only reason I cannot find in my heart to hate that movie is because I grew up with it. That is the only reason.
well, to be fair, I did too, but like I also hadn't seen it in like a decade and a half when we went to cover it for the podcast.
Mhm.
So, that's
So
its
we're
own
moving
thing.
on to my top 10 best, right?
Yes.
I'm going to have to go with The Hunger Games. There is so
Interesting.
much, there's just so much good packed into this movie
I
that,
agree. Yeah, I agree. It didn't make it onto my 10 best at all. But it is really good. And I love that. I love the book series. I love the movie series. It's so well adapted. And like the way they showcase poverty is it's very real and raw, and it's also
mhm.
fundamentally a story about someone managing to keep her compassion in the absolute worst of circumstances.
I'm also, if you don't know me, which most of you probably don't know much, I'm also into a lot of these killing games. Like I play Danganronpa, and I like how they can do like these games without being like way too edgy.
Right.
Because that's a very big trap.
This is
You know, you
probably
have all
also
this death.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you have all this death happening. It's a very big trap to just go straight in a hard right of edginess.
Yeah, and I appreciate that the Hunger Games doesn't do that. This is probably also a good time to mention that the next
Hmm.
episode of Off the Shelf is going to be on the Hunger Games.
Oh, I might actually watch it this time. What?
Yeah. So for my number 10 best, I have Wally.
Interesting. We might see that
So
movie later.
yeah, I figured we probably would because like that's like you've told me before that that's your favorite Pixar movie. Um
It definitely is.
Wally is like very much in some ways a precautionary tale. And I mean, honestly, like it came out in 2008 and we still haven't learned our lesson about pollution. There's an island of trash in the ocean. Like, come on. Um,
I just hope if this is our future, there is two robots that fall in love.
yeah, like, I mean, the other thing at the end of the day is that Wally is an excellent non binary romance.
Definitely.
But
Is that it? Or
yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to say. Like we talked to other.
I'll definitely be talking about it and why I love the movie later.
Yeah.
Oh
So
god, it's just a ticking time bomb of your reaction. But this is no one's surprise. Well, except maybe yours. Thor: The Dark World.
huh. That's interesting. That one actually appears further up on my worst list.
I
But I
don't
am kind of
know.
surprised. I am kind of surprised. Wait, no, I'm not. Uh, I was about to say I was kind of surprised to see it on your worst list, but then like, meh. Uh,
I mean,
it,
you also know how much I like Thor, and there's a lot of good things about Thor: The Dark World. I think largely because of everything that's wrong, I'm a bit disappointed because it could have been really good.
yeah, it could have been so good, but the thing is, like, they built up this intimidating villain in Malekith, but then they don't really give him a
Mhm.
motive at all. And he ends up
Oh,
getting
definitely
bested.
not.
Yeah, and he ends up getting bested by a couple of human intern nerds with nothing but tripods.
Definitely
And
an interesting way to say it, but you can talk about that if it's in your earlier up.
and like the
Speaking
good
about
parts
your
of the
list,
movie, yeah, the good parts of that movie boil down to Loki anyway. But yeah, so my number 9 worst was also a Marvel movie, The Incredible Hulk,
interesting.
because
Oh, that's your number 9.
as bad as Thor: The Dark World was, okay, so I think The Incredible Hulk is very boring, but I think The Dark World is worse, just
Hmm.
because of more potential squandered. The problem with The Incredible Hulk was that we had already gotten a Hulk movie 5 years earlier. People didn't want to see a rehash of the same thing, and thankfully this wasn't that. But at the same time, they clearly didn't know what they wanted to do with it, so they tried to tell a story, but it was boring as shit.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so
Oh,
I
this
give
is
them more sympathy because they were in a weird situation.
okay. My top 9 best movie is also another weird one.
Go ahead.
Deadpool.
Interesting.
I love this
Uh,
movie, especially because it's how comedy oriented, but also really funny around its violence as well. Like, it is unapologetically violent, and that's why I
yeah,
love it.
yeah. It ought to be. I mean, it's Deadpool. Now,
And hmm, sorry.
arguably, we probably shouldn't have even covered Deadpool, um, or Deadpool 2, because of like the whole X-Men series and how it ties in and everything. There were clearly some references that neither one of us got. Um,
That's true. But however, I this movie stands on its own and stands well. The Deadpool
yeah,
character is just a riot.
yeah.
And I
He's
don't think I can
hilarious.
describe it anywhere else.
Yeah, fair. So my number 9 best is Luca.
Interesting.
God,
Okay.
when Luca first came out, I was torn. Like I was actually torn on whether or not Luca was my favorite Pixar movie because, like, I couldn't tell how much of it was hype from it being a new movie and how much of it was the movie actually being this amazing. And the same thing would happen
Mhm.
again later on down the line with Turning Red. I still think Inside Out is my favorite Pixar movie, and that holds true, but we haven't covered Inside Out, so Luca is my number 9 best. It isn't really a queer story, but it does have so much subtext that is very queer. Um, and I can't help but love it for that. And it's also a very entertaining, engaging story. And I love how low stakes it is. Not every movie needs to be super high stakes. And also,
Mhm.
Julia is an amazing character, and she's literally my profile picture on Disney Plus.
Really
Yeah, really.
interesting. Okay. I think we have too many things that you can agree with, so I need to just go into a turnball here.
Oh,
For my 8th least favorite movie, Tangled Before Ever After. This movie could not get me to care about its songs, about what Rapunzel was doing. I honestly feel like the end of the movie, even with the short, that was enough. And now it's bringing in with this weird ass art styles to claiming that it wants to milk more of the series, which I don't know the TV show, so I guess I don't have that experience. It is just, after thinking about it harshly, I cannot forgive this movie for how long I've had to sit through this.
I think that's a weird take, honestly, because I think it was a pretty engaging story to go into. It like expanded on the world. It like explored more of Rapunzel and Eugene's characters, explored Rapunzel's parents for the first time, introduced the new character of Cassandra, and like it's a pilot episode to the it's kind of a pilot episode to the TV show, and I think maybe that's what kind of hurts it, because you don't have the context of the rest of the TV show to make it feel as needed.
As right now, I feel this movie is as needed as the shitty. Well, actually, I don't know if it's shitty. The Lion King 2 that was released just for DVD.
See, I personally thought that Stitch the movie was far worse than Before Ever After, and even that one didn't make it onto my list.
I loved, not really loved, but I liked the return to character of Stitch, and especially knowing we have to cover that, 2 more times? Why this movie, of all things, gets so much out of it? I will never know.
But
Still.
My number 8 worst is Rio 2.
Wow. Another movie we'll be seeing again.
Yeah, so Rio is by far the best Blue Sky movie. I complained about in the Rio episode about how, like, Blue should have been the mascot of Blue Sky. It would have made so much more sense. But no, Ice Age had to be more popular. So we got this stupid fucking Ice Age squirrel. And it just, as great of a movie Rio was, it's so more aggravating that the sequel manages to destroy the characters that much more. Like, I would compare this to Ralph Breaks the Internet, but the problem is, I think Ralph Breaks the Internet might actually be worse. Because
God
at least
help us when we cover that.
Yeah, at least Rio 2 wasn't a corporate jerk-off fest. This movie just kind of destroyed the characters and wasn't fun to watch, and the songs were subpar compared to the original. I don't know, and it relied on so many cliches in its storytelling, and the story was also all over the place. Whereas the story in Rio 1 was brilliant. Like, where Rio 1 feels like a good Disney movie, Rio 2 feels like a Disney direct-to-DVD sequel.
Definitely.
Yeah.
As for my 8th best, I am going Back to the Future.
I have Back to the Future a little further up on my best list.
And for this, I actually do want to compile all the other 2 movies as well, because Back to the Future really does just seem like one big movie, not 3 movies.
See, I don't necessarily agree with that. I honestly think Back to the Future suffers from a similar problem of, like, How to Train Your Dragon, where, like, the other 2 movies are good, but they are nowhere near as good as the first one.
Yeah. I just think, like, when you watch, like, if you watch it back to back, it can almost feel like, nothing. There's not even time passes between these 3 movies. Well, time does pass, but time travel.
But not much time. Yeah, like, not much time passes between the 3 movies. But at the same time, like, the way the first movie is told is a lot more strong than the second or third movie. And I mean, it's later up on my list. So, yeah. For my number 8 best, I have Turning Red.
Oh, interesting.
Like, God, I love this movie, and once again, I question whether or not I liked it more than Inside Out. I don't. I think Inside Out is stronger in its message. And the controversies surrounding Turning Red are stupid, as I've addressed before. Yes, teenage girls have periods. And also, uh, you were probably just as cringy in your teenage years as Mei Lin Lee was in hers.
Sorry. You mentioned it, so I want to bring it up. I heard someone was like, "Oh, I can't believe they mentioned periods to kids. You have to wait until they're adults." Like, when do you think they first start getting periods?
I've heard of young girls getting their periods at 9 years old, and the main character of this movie is 13. Like, come on.
Yeah, like a lot of people, and I'm gonna say exclusively white men, just
40-year-old
do
white
not
men
understand. Oh,
with no kids.
yeah. They probably take testosterone supplements.
For real. But like also it's a great showcase of Pixar's like how far Pixar has come with animation. That scene where her dad is cooking food is just exquisite.
Oh, I don't put it on my top list, but man, I got hungry.
Yeah, like God, gorgeous. And also the Godzilla like the whole Godzilla red panda was it was something. It was great. And the music in the movie
It,
also like brings back the style of like 90s early 2000s boy bands.
Mhm.
And it was they did it really well. It's great. It very much reminds you of like Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. Uh
Before we move on, I just want to quickly say something. When the big panda comes out and you go to the movie, just imagine that being Bowser.
oh god. All right. Your number 7
And
worst.
now, number 7 worst, Snow White. This
See,
movie is just not it, man. It's just
yeah,
not it.
I definitely get your perspective. I didn't put it on my list just purely because it was the first ever feature-length animated film. It's such a major technical feat. No other animated movies that we have now would have been possible without it. And
That's
Disney, like
true. But
Disney, really.
no other movie that we have covered has done a romance this bad.
I disagree with that. I will say this. I disagree with that. There is one movie that has done a romance far worse.
Was that Lady and the Tramp, or even worse?
It's worse. But anyway,
Okay.
Snow White definitely has its problems with consent issues, not developing the
Wait.
romance.
I actually know which one you're talking about. And I will just say, romance that hasn't already started yet.
But Snow White has consent issues, misogynistic dwarves, really weird pervy shit going on, awkward gender stereotypes. It's all kinds of messed up, but the animation really works. But the other issues is like the songs are not memorable at all.
And I
So there's that
cannot.
too.
And then there's just like these dwarfs, like they're most of the title, and yet they're not very memorable either. Like, what point did they even serve?
Yeah, there's better Snow White movies than this. I'm sure of it. I can't pick one right now, but I'm sure they exist. So for my number
On to
7
yours.
worst, for my number 7 worst, this is going to offend a lot of people. But my number
Ooh.
7 worst is Home Alone.
Wow.
I hated Home Alone. Like, the entire premise of this movie is that Kevin needs to learn a moral lesson about appreciating his family. but his family spends the entire first 15 minutes of the movie being abusive pricks. I hated this. The scenes where Harry, like he's defending the house from Harry and Marv, are enjoyable. His conversations with the old man, whose name I can't remember, are enjoyable.
Wait, did he
But
ever
the
get a name? I
entire,
can't remember.
but the entire like moral message of the movie is so bankrupt. I don't understand how it not only got to be as popular as it did, but also somehow got 5 sequels.
I think everyone can attest that 5 sequels was way too much. Oh my god, that was just too much.
Yeah, way too much. So,
just hurrying this along a little bit more. My
we don't
next best
need to
movie,
hurry.
just a little bit. Just my next best movie is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Interesting.
There's
I
something.
actually. It's interesting because actually only one MCU movie even makes it onto my top 10.
Which I know which one that is.
Yeah.
Which is actually my next one as well.
Interesting.
For best.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy is certainly funny.
First of all, entertain me to no end, Groot, but also that freaking raccoon has to be my favorite part of the movie, hands down.
I will never understand why.
Of his
Go ahead.
The way of his character would, like, at first he's just a bounty hunter with a tree, to then having this complex character of he doesn't know what a raccoon is, and he's just a failed science experiment gone wrong.
So I was going to say, I will never understand why they chose to hire Vin Diesel to play Groot. Because, like, that guy's worth, like, that guy costs a lot of money, and you're basically just having him say, I am Groot over and over and over again. It just seems like a weird choice, but I don't hate it.
Yeah,
but, like,
it feels very weird, but it's funny.
Yeah, but like Guardians of the Galaxy is a movie that pretty much nobody expected to work. It's a team-up movie about characters we've never actually seen before. And I don't even think they were popular in the comics at the time. So it was just kind of out of nowhere. And it did really well. So great job. They knocked it out of the park, and all the 80s music is really fun too.
As for yours?
Yeah, so my number 7 best is Encanto.
I was tempted, honestly. I was very tempted, but I couldn't.
I couldn't put it any higher because there are problems with this movie that I didn't talk much about in our Encanto episode. So the twist with Isabella not actually being a selfish, entitled princess does not work at all. And the reason it doesn't work is because, one, there's no hint towards it. If you go back and rewatch the movie, there's nothing to hint that she feels any regret for the way she treats the people around her. Nothing to hint at it. But then after this twist happens, there's no more further development either. So, like, that's an issue. But then also, we have this whole conversation about how Bruno's gift isn't helping the family. And I can't remember the character's name, but there's another character who can shapeshift. How is that gift helping anyone? The only way shapeshifting can be useful is like shapeshifting if you're shapeshifting into other people. The only way that can be useful is in espionage. And this family isn't doing espionage.
That would be very useful in espionage. Though, there are scenes where he is shown helping. Yeah,
he's helping, but it's not really like, I don't know. It's just the weird idea of like your gift has to be useful, that just seemed weird to me. And it's also kind of unrealistic for the grandmother to apologize. But that said, the music is great. This like the music is fantastic. The animation is gorgeous. Otherwise, like from the aside from those few things I mentioned, the story is also really good. It's just
Mhm.
a well put together movie and one of Disney Animation Studios' best in recent memory. It's a shame that it followed up with an average movie like Strange World, and also came after a movie like Raya and the Last Dragon.
Um, for my next worst movie, we have Incredibly Boring Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk. These
This
are some
movie
interesting. This is some interesting
can,
placement. I'm sorry, I just have to
yeah,
mention this while you're
hmm.
while we're getting ahead here. So, your Thor: The Dark World was your number 9. The Incredible Hulk was my number 9. The Incredible Hulk is your number 6. Thor: The Dark World is my number
Wait,
6.
I was really hoping that would be the case. I was kind of hoping. Um, this movie could, like, I actually tried, to keep up with the plot. I couldn't. That's how
It,
uninterested I was in this movie.
it's just so
And just,
boring. It's so boring. We have multiple chase scenes when you really only maybe needed 2 at most. Like the most entertaining scene in the movie is the final battle with Abomination.
um, yeah.
And like
This
it has
movie,
I'm sorry, it has a really weird place in the MCU. The MCU is supposed to be a comedy series, and this movie is unique in the fact that it's not funny at all.
there was, everyone knows that DK meme is not funny, didn't laugh. That's the entire movie, except Donkey Kong is just asleep.
Yeah, like just I don't know. Edward Norton doesn't make the character of Bruce Banner as compelling as Mark Ruffalo does. So I mean, I guess it's a good thing that he kind of just was a dick and they replaced him with Mark Ruffalo. But yeah, I have Thor: The Dark World in this slot. Like I said, I think it's so much worse because the amount of potential was so much better for that movie, so it's more disappointing to me.
Definitely.
Where, yeah, so
Um,
like with the Incredible Hulk, they were put in a rough spot. So your number 6 best?
my number 6 best. Let me just scroll up. The one you already knew about. Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Interesting. That's a little further up on my list. But yeah, Captain
This
America.
I want to say that this movie, I think, does everything right that a Marvel movie can do. The comedy was pretty good. The twists and turns of this movie were phenomenal. Um, when it was revealed that Hydra was controlling the strings of Shield from the inside. Well, honestly, I was shocked to my core.
Yeah, like it's such a big like it's so big, and it's also like really cool to have a character whose entire identity is rooted in being a government symbol to have to question that very government.
Hmm.
It's so good, and it's like
Shield.
Captain America. It's Captain America's story is integrity versus ideology, and it's so well done. Like it catapulted Captain America into being a lot of people's favorite character. Like pretty much nobody had Captain America as their favorite character in the MCU after the first Avenger or even after the Avengers. But now after Winter Soldier? Absolutely. And it also introduced Falcon. So,
Our
cool for
tax
that too.
money, our tax monies are being wasted on Shield funding. Let's stop this.
Little would they know that their tax money would still be used to fund S.H.I.E.L.D.
Fuck.
But yeah,
Now,
so my
onto
number
yours.
6, yeah, so my number 6 best, Back to the Future.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this movie is really good. There's a little blurb on my DVD copy of Back to the Future, and it says, it's ironic that a movie about time travel is timeless. And I think that's a very
I love
fitting
that.
description. Yeah, it's a very fitting description. It's so good. Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox bring excellent performances. The story is well told. Yeah, there's the incest problem. But I mean, besides that, it's a really good story.
I won't even call it a problem, at least for me, because like it's played off like this is a bad thing, you know?
Yeah,
And
it's just a thing that makes some people uncomfortable.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really good movie, but we also talked about it earlier.
Mm-hmm. So then,
Moving on to your number
my
5. Yeah, your number
number
5
5
worst.
We're getting to the half of the crop. The Parent Trap. Never
Really?
have I.
Wait,
There's
no,
a
I'm
few other
surprised.
movies.
I'm genuinely surprised that this isn't number 1, because The Parent Trap received your lowest rating ever on the podcast. You rated that at a 1.0.
That is true. While going through all these movies, and I was rating them on how much I cared, and a lot of the movies after this, I cared in the negatives. I cared so much that I will actively go on my way to hate it. And actually, the rest of the movies are actually going off of like the rest of my movies are now personal on the negative side.
Okay, so I
This
should
one,
clarify that I should clarify for the people listening that when we're talking about The Parent Trap here, we are talking about the version from
oh right,
1961. We are not
yeah,
talking about the 90s
1969.
remake. Yeah, we are not talking about the 90s remake because we have not covered that one yet. And as for me, I think that version is a way, way, way better movie.
And I think the reason why it's so high on my list is because I have no personal vendetta against this movie. You have a lot more because you've seen the remake and see what it could have been. This
Yeah,
movie
like,
is just a bad movie.
yeah, for me, like, this movie has so many problems that hold it back. It's racist, it's sexist, it promotes child abuse, domestic violence.
You know, I'll actually I'll let you go into full depth when it's your number 1. I'm assuming it's your number 1, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Spoiler alert, it's my number 1 worst.
And now we can go on to your number 5th worst.
The Angry Birds movie. God,
Interesting.
I have never seen a movie try so damn hard to be funny and fail so miserably. I hated the Angry Birds movie. It was so goddamn boring, so goddamn unfunny, and I could not get invested in any of the characters. Swear to Christ. The fact that they literally resorted to a piss joke that took 2 minutes of the runtime. I think that was the worst for me. That's what broke me. I'm sorry, but it's like it was always going to be bad. It's a movie being adapted off of a goddamn app game. You know, it was always going to suck. I just didn't expect it to suck this bad.
Interesting. So, Um, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Is this actually the lyrics? Whatever. Expand your imagination to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Interesting. That one's not on either of my lists. It's a good movie, but I do think it overhyped. Um, it's fairly
This,
enjoyable.
yeah, this movie can bring a lot of emotions at once. Just the pure terrifyingness of how well the character works for Willy Wonka, the spoiled brats of the other contestants, the way the movie just makes it so unrealistic in the first 30 minutes that once you go into the chocolate factory, you don't question anything.
You know, I think the reason that
And
it doesn't make it on my list is sorry. I think the reason that it doesn't make it on my list is because of how annoying the other kids are.
mhm.
I think they did
and I
like personally. I think they did their job too well there.
definitely, absolutely, but I love the songs. I'm prefacing that. Sorry, I love the songs. I love the characters that are not the brats. Willy Wonka was just a joy to spend the time with, you know?
Yeah, I definitely understand why people love this movie. I just think it's a little overhyped.
Okay. As for
So
you,
yeah, so my number 5 best is Love, Simon. God, it is so good
interesting.
to it is so good to finally see a big budget teen gay romance hit the big screen from a major studio. This was from 20th Century Fox, who I have been very, very critical of when it comes to book to movie adaptations, because they either do a really good job or a really horrible one. And with
Hmm.
this one, the author was heavily involved. It's still not 100% like the book. But I think the author probably approved every decision. I do have my one major issue, which is like how Simon treats his sister when she first finds out that he's gay, because that scene plays out so much more wholesome in the book, and I feel like the movie does a discredit to Simon's character in the way that that scene happens.
Definitely. I only know what you told me, but from what you told me, I can definitely see why.
Yeah. But I
So,
mean, it's
um,
a great movie and it's fantastic for queer representation. Just brilliant.
so is it on to mine again?
Yeah, your number 4 worst.
So I actually stayed quiet when you talked about this movie because there is something I actually disagree with. Because mine is the Angry Birds movie, which actually the shorts, because Angry Birds actually has shorts, were so much better than anything that this movie could have actually done. And I've actually seen other things that this studio, the game company, has put out. And this movie is actually the point of where they just decline. They use the movie's art style, which looks bad. They were able to do the shorts in the round art style. Why couldn't they done the movie like that? They could have done the movie like the shorts. It's just so much better. And not to mention, I love the games. I think the games are one of my favorite just random time wasters. To see this disgrace, this absolute putrid thing on my screen is disgusting. The jokes, the plot, everything, every individual pixel of this movie is garbage.
I actually will disagree with that statement. The scenes where they are actually attacking the town of the pigs, those are brilliant.
Well, I
Where it
love, well, I
actually
love
is a
that.
recreation of the game.
Well, I love that too, and I have no proof of this. That's just like something to pad out the trailers. Like, oh, we're actually being truthful to the movie, to the game. It's
And the
like
reason I say
I,
that the movie was always going to be bad, and I don't necessarily agree that the shorts also have to be, is because of how long movies have to be. Shorts can
that's
be good.
true.
They can be done well. But
Honestly,
you're
like if
not going
this
to make a
movie
2 hour
was
angry you're not going to make a 2 hour Angry Birds movie and have it be good. It's just not going to happen.
And if you made it like the same length as Tangled, it made like an hour, 15, 20 minutes. I think that would have been really good.
Yeah, but then it would
I
be a
had
waste of movie tickets.
That's true. I had hopes for this movie, and honestly, yeah, the movie should not have even existed, at least in the form of the big screen. Maybe direct to DVD.
So, for my number 4 worst, I have Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters. Although
Interesting.
I accidentally left out the second S, so it's just Sea of Monster. One monster, that's the only one in the sea, which might be fairly accurate to the movie, to be honest, because we
Sea of
only
One
ever see
Monster.
yeah, because we only ever see Charybdis. What's up with that?
Lol.
But yeah, like I give it more credit than the Lightning Thief because the people behind that movie they were trying like they were trying to pick up the pieces, but they didn't really have the tools to do so. Uh, like I said in our Sea of Monsters episode, the vibe that I get from the first movie is arrogance, and the vibe that I get from this movie is incompetence.
Definitely. Are we gonna go back to mine?
Back to
My
your
top
Angry
one.
Birds. Oh yeah, your number 4 best.
So I'm actually gonna derail a little bit here because everyone knows why this movie is great. Everyone. So I'm actually going to spend my time saying why it isn't first. How to Train Your Dragons. Because, wow, this is a great movie. But honestly, I feel like a lot of people give it way too much credit than it actually deserves. Because there is so many characters that they would later use in their sequels, not to their fullest potential, but to a potential. In this movie just falls flat. Like they didn't even exist. Why did they exist? Astrid was the only good one, and you have like the twins, this arrogant person, and then this know-it-all. Like very kind of stereotypical. Um, like the movie only wants you to care about Hiccup and Astrid when it comes to those characters.
Well, also Hiccup's father and Toothless.
Oh, that's
I I think the thing that makes How to Train Your Dragon the first one, the best one of the trilogy, is the way it explores the relationships that Hiccup has. The relationship with his father, the relationship with Toothless, and the relationship with Astrid. None of the other movies
honest.
explore them in nearly as much detail as the first one does.
Honestly, I want to when I get to later in my movies, I'm gonna say no. I think there's a movie, and not just a movie, but the way that they use the franchise in its favor. Because the introductions of these characters is not the end, and I do not think how they introduced them was anywhere good. But other than that, the animation gorgeous. Toothless, just amazing. And the
Also, the score of
foreshadowing.
the score of the first movie is just overall better than the score of the other two.
I don't know. But everything about this movie, beautiful. Chef kiss.
So, my number 4 best is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Yeah, for pretty much all the reasons I listed before. It's a great exploration of Captain America's character and something that we really don't see all that often in storytelling. It also works really well as a standalone action movie. Like, if you took all the superhero elements out of the movie, you're left with still a pretty great movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's wonderful. I think the way it's executed is brilliant. The way it leads into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I have said before how I think that Captain America's The Winter Soldier is far more important for Marvel Television than it is for mainline MCU. But that doesn't really mean that it's not important for mainline MCU. It just affects Marvel Television way more.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think
Absolutely.
the way the story is told is brilliant. I love the relationship between Cap and Falcon. The only thing I really don't like is how Black Widow is used in the movie. It just feels a little weird to me, but I mean, that's neither here nor there. That's like my own personal taste. I think it's probably the second best MCU movie ever made and easily the best of Phase 2.
Great. Now, you basically covered everything I would want to say about this movie, but Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters is my third worst.
Interesting.
This
So, yeah, go ahead.
it's just so bad. And the way that I had to finish the entire book series, at least the first series of books, in order I was able to watch this movie, because the weird thing at the end, like, they had no right to do that.
Well, it's not
And I
okay.
have no
No,
idea.
it's the fact that they spoiled several key details that would be occurring later in the books, particularly who was the spy in book 5. They spoil that.
Mhm.
And it's just like, why?
But they had just no right to just reveal Kronos, whatever, in that last scene. Because it actually added nothing to the movie. They only added it because they realized, oh crap, we need something to pad out the time. Why? Is all I'm gonna ask.
Yeah, like I said, they were just incompetent. So, my number 3 worst is Percy Jackson and the Olympians: The Lightning Thief.
Hmm.
So, okay, as bad as Sea of Monsters is, I have never seen a book to movie adaptation botched worse than The Lightning Thief. And also, can I just talk about how fucking weird it is that they changed the title format for the movies?
So weird.
Yeah, like for starters, yeah, I concede Percy Jackson and the Olympians: The Lightning Thief is too long of a title. But you have to keep these things consistent. Calling the second one Percy Jackson: Sea of Monsters feels weird. But, I mean, either way, what an awful adaptation. And like I said, the vibe of this movie leads me to believe that the writer and director arrogantly believed that they could do a better job than Rick Riordan, even though not only was the original book a bestseller, but so was every single book in the entire saga, including the spin-offs.
Tisk,
And
tisk,
it's just
tisk.
it's
Writers.
just a weird way. One of the worst the worst book to movie adaptation I have ever seen. At the same time, I have not seen Artemis Fowl. I've heard it's worse. So I'm scared.
Avory is scared. So, we're on to my third best, right?
Yes, we
Oh,
are.
top three. Let's go, though. Um, honestly, it's Rio. The songs were perfect. Everything. The animation, gorgeous. Way too much water. Sorry, I had to bring it in. Um, the plot was pretty good. I'm not going to say it's anything out of the water, but it's not, completely boring. It was pretty
Yeah,
good.
like I said, it's Blue Sky's best movie, and it makes Rio 2 all the more disappointing. This is why I give Rio an honor. Like I'm giving Rio an honorable mention for my best list because it's so good. It feels like a Disney movie, and the two romances in the movie are done so well. It's a
One a
shame
bit
Rio
more than
2
the
had.
other, but whatever.
It's a shame Rio 2 had to exist.
So if you're gonna, I think, like, I know
Yeah,
it's very simple what I said, but I don't think I can elaborate any more on what I said.
yeah.
The
Um,
music, though,
yeah, that music. I have pretty much the entire playlist on my Spotify. Wait,
I
what?
should have the
I
entire playlist on my Spotify.
yeah. So my number three best is Lilo and Stitch. Oh my god, this is one of
Interesting.
the best. It is one of the best movies Disney Animation Studios has ever put out. Like, and you will not find a more believable child character in any realm of fiction than Lilo. And the parallels between her and how her family, like the parallels between her and Stitch are just, it's a lot. And then there are things that you only discover about the movie after rewatching it several times, like how the reason she feeds Pudge the fish a peanut butter sandwich is because she believes that Pudge controls the weather. But then you also connect that to the fact that her parents died in a storm. It just adds so much dimension. And then on top of that, Lilo has her own interests. She's not a one-dimensional character. She loves Elvis's music. She has a passion for photography. It's something that the sequel movie,
Hmm.
Stitch the movie, they didn't really go to. Like they had one scene that referenced her passion for photography in that entire sequel. It just kind of, I don't know. I love Lilo and Stitch. It's fantastic. Um, Child Me liked the movie
Elvis
too,
Presley.
but Child Me also really liked the movie. But as an adult, I'm appreciating it so much more because of how well the broken family is written and how the message about found family carries so strongly.
I'm sorry, but just the one thing I can only think of when you say that is like that garbage meme of when you're happy, you listen to the music. When you're sad, you understand the lyrics.
So
Now
yeah,
try
what's your
making
number?
that. Try understand the Squid Sisters lyrics.
Now, what's your number two worst?
So remember when you were talking about Rio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rio
It's
2. This movie, and there's a reason why it's not number one, is because it feels like they tried and failed. Like they wanted to make a movie, but they just didn't. They just couldn't because of maybe management, maybe something else that wanted to push this movie to only make cheap, not just cheap toys. And that's
yeah,
what it
and
feels like
like
this movie was.
awful cliches, a story that was all over the place, subpar songs. it just wasn't very enjoyable to me. My number two
And the
worst.
reason why this is number two. Oh, well, I
Go
mean, I
ahead.
want to say a bit
Yeah,
more.
just go ahead.
And the reason why this
Yeah,
is
just go
number
ahead.
2 is because of how much Rio has done for me. That movie is just gorgeous all around. To have this movie to literally just take like a bird dump on it, just flying bird dump, is amazingly just heartful. Like, it's almost impressive how they could ruin the franchise so fast.
Yeah, and somehow it didn't fail as bad as Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Oh, when we cover that movie, Jesus.
Yeah. Ugh. So my number two worst is our free movie of the month for December 2022, Zapped. I wanted to cover
Oh,
this movie so bad so I could rip it to shreds. God, that
that's a
movie.
movie Avery, that was
Yeah?
the movie that was missing from the list.
Why
That's what
did
was
you miss
missing.
this one? Why did you skip this one? It is so bad that it's memorable
No,
enough
I
to
mean,
be on here.
remember when we were talking about how one movie probably got left out? I just could not remember. It was so unrememberable that I could not remember this movie because of how bad it was.
No, see, that's the
If
thing.
I
It's memorable because of how bad it is. The consent issues, the message being so the message being so weird that you have to question who this movie is for.
Mm-hmm. And the
Because the whole
sexism too.
movie,
Don't forget the sexism.
oh yeah, the sexism. But yeah, the whole message of the movie is about consent and how you shouldn't take away people's consent. And I'm sorry, but the people that need to hear this message aren't going to get it from a Disney Channel original movie. And the people who are going to be watching the movie on Disney Channel probably already get the message. So who the hell is it for?
Honestly, like, if I had to go back now, I think I'd probably put that on my number 5th area. Mostly because number 1 through 4 were all personal. Good
Christ, like
Burger
I
is now
hated it.
just Good Burger is now just a mentionable thing.
Yeah, a dishonorable mention, which I'll get to my
Yeah.
dishonorable mention here in a minute. But yeah, I guess talk about your number two best.
What? Wally? Okay, I tried and failed
So
with that one.
yeah, that was a
Though I,
fail. Really good movie.
I think you knew this was coming up. You
I
just
knew it
knew.
was gonna be somewhere, but I didn't really expect it at number two. Because well, now I think I probably do know what your number one is. For a second, I was like, "What's your number one?" But wait, no, I don't, because you already talked
But,
about it. I have
yeah.
no clue what your number one is gonna be.
Well, I mean, it's actually you already know. There's something I want to talk about my number 1 leading up to when I got it. But let's talk about
But
Wally
yeah,
for now.
yeah.
I love this film to death. This film, I would want this film to be buried with me. Because this is just a film, like, filmography masterpiece. The way that they can express emotion, so much emotion, without any words in the first 30 minutes. You already know
without
Wally Steele in the first
without the
10.
without the characters even having mouths.
Oh, yeah. Like, you already know Wally's entire character in the first 10 minutes. You know Eve's entire deal in the first 5 of her introduction. And looking at this ship, the Enterprise, the Star Jet, you know what has happened to it. No one needs to tell you. This
And
movie,
also,
like we have encountered so many movies that the movie just treats you like a toddler. This movie is the exact opposite of that.
and also
It doesn't
Wally
tell
is
you
total.
anything.
And also Wally is totally 22 from Soul. But yeah,
This movie does so much with so little. It's actually incredible. And
so
it
for
is
my number
probably
two,
Midnight Shyamalan's worst nightmare.
well, M. Night Shyamalan hasn't exclusively made bad movies.
I'm just saying on how little exposition there is.
But yeah, so for my number two best, you could probably see it coming. It's Scott Pilgrim versus the World, our first episode ever. It there is so much to this movie to enjoy. There's action, comedy, romance. It there's just a lot, and the transitions, Edgar Wright's directing, the fantastic cast. I don't know, just what
It wasn't
more
on,
could you want?
yeah, it wasn't on my favorite list. I don't know. It's just honestly the only reason I have it is it's just not. It's good, but I can't exactly say that I would go on my way to watch it.
I have gone out of my way
With
to
if
watch this movie so many times. It
I don't
for a
doubt
while
that.
for a while it was literally my favorite movie, and now I have to put it at number two because now that the podcast has made me think critically about both of my top two favorite movies, I think the other one's better. But we'll get to that.
Okay, and now to my number one worst movie. And before I even talk about it, there's some backstory I want to have. You got me into this series, and I don't know how. I cannot remember how you actually got me in this series of books. I there's I think Avery just talked about Percy Jackson so much. I was like, okay, I just have to figure it out, for myself, right? And my God, the level of depth the book's willing to go to is actually really nice, and it was nice to read again. So for
Yeah, and
this
the fact
movie to just put in a left-right jab into my face and said, no, we could do better than this lipstick shit. Oh my God. The
I have
arrogance.
I have said
Like,
many, many times, Percy Jackson would have been as big as Harry Potter if the movies were not botched.
no. This
It's
movie does not just spit on, Rick Riordan's work. This movie spits on Greek mythology altogether.
for real. Like
That's
the books are already
you
big, and they had to ruin it.
how do you go so low to ruin mythology? I do not know.
I mean, it doesn't have as many mythological inaccuracies as, say, Disney's Hercules, but at least Disney's Hercules has the benefit of otherwise being a pretty good movie.
Yeah, no, this movie could not even, with how many inaccuracies it gone, it couldn't even been an alright movie. No, it just had to be a trash one.
Yeah, it annoys me. It annoys me so bad. Thankfully, a couple of years ago, we got the fan-made musical adaptation, which is just chef's kiss, fucking amazing. Even Rick Riordan said he loved it. And Now, Disney's basically giving him the budget and the freedom to do an adaptation into a TV series however he wants to do it. And you better believe we're going to be covering that when it comes out.
There's something interesting about that, the Disney, because a lot of people are blaming Disney for these bad remakes
Yeah,
of
and it's because they
these
don't.
bad movies.
Yeah, and it's because they don't understand that Disney had nothing to do with these movies.
They just end up buying them.
Yeah, like
Really, I feel
Disney
like
has the rights
that should have
now.
made the price. These two movies should have made the price go down a lot. I know they didn't, but
I have a feeling the main reasons. I feel like there were a lot of really good reasons that Disney wanted to buy Fox. I don't feel like Percy Jackson was anywhere near the priority. Um, like the things that come to mind for me are the rights to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and also the rights to an entire third of Hulu. I think those were probably the biggest things on their mind. But the Percy Jackson community was probably clamoring for Disney to get those rights because it would mean that someone else would have the chance to adapt Percy Jackson. And well, I don't know if we would have expected Disney to get Rick Riordan involved. Disney has not had a horrible track record of book to movie adaptations. One of my favorite book to movie adaptations of all time, actually, two of my favorites of all time, were by Disney, and those being Bridge to Terabithia and The Chronicles of Narnia, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Those are some of the best book to movie adaptations ever made, and they were both done by Disney. So,
actually,
like, even
wait,
if they.
hold on a second. Sorry, you just reminded me of something. Whoever wrote and directed Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief, this meme goes out to you. The Lion, the Witch, and the audacity of this bitch.
Oh my god. Yeah, and he was the same guy who directed I want to say the first two Harry Potter movies, but those movies did well because he wasn't allowed to make the changes that he wanted to make.
Of
So,
course, we drilled this point to everyone's head. We already know what yours one is, your number one is, but I
yeah.
kind of want to hear you explain it
So, my number one
again.
worst is the 1961 Parent Trap movie. It's so bad. I wasn't expecting it. It took me by surprise because for years, hell, for over a decade and a half, I had only watched the remake over and over and over again. I had seen the original before, but I don't know. I was probably like 7. So to come back and see this version of the movie and see racism, sexism, child abuse, a very clear pattern of intimate partner violence. And you're trying to make me root for these two characters to get back together, coupled with how uninteresting the relationship between the twins are compared to how well that's written in the remake. I'm sorry, I think this is the worst movie we've ever covered. And I was so disappointed because I was really looking forward to it.
Definitely can
It
see.
broke me. I knew
Um,
I'd seen it before, but I didn't know it was. I did not remember it was this bad. I knew the remake was better. I didn't expect it to be that much of a swing. So your
so
number one
I
best.
think and I want to start with a backstory like what I did with the last one. So imagine me, I was in Fred Meyer and I wanted to go look at the low tech area, and then I saw it, this Blu-ray DVD. It was a bit pricey because it just came out, but I never seen it before. I loved this series, so I just had to get it. And that night, I popped it into my Blu-ray player, or did I play the DVD for it? Whatever. And let me tell you, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World was a lot better than I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, I'll be honest. Maybe I was expecting a little bit of DreamWorks ruined my franchise, my one of my favorite movies. But the way that they handled the characters in this movie, some of our supporting cast, they have their own plots, which is a lot more than I can say about the original. And only Snotlouts was the worst. Only Snotlouts was bad.
See, for
There's
me,
a plot about Fish Legs, dragon, which Fish Legs was actually inspired from the TV show, I believe. That his entire plot was inspired by the TV show. The twins were just being the twins. The twins were so much better in the TV show because they're
for
the
me,
twins.
For me, I never really cared about any of the side characters in any of the movies. Like even the Hidden World didn't make me care about them. And
And
I think the way
um,
that Hiccup and his interactions with other characters is explored in the first movie is just better. But I do think it's fitting that we both agree that 2 is probably the weakest one.
and I will. There's more. There's way more I want to talk about with this. This movie um, explores Hiccup's and Astra's relationship to a T. And I love their relationship because it is given the proper time to grow. And while a lot of the time we don't see it on screen, we just know like it's blossomed even further from the last time we got to visit it. We just know
I think one of
it has gone a lot better than the last time.
I think one of the I think one of the things that bothers me about the series, and I guess it doesn't bother you, but there's like a 5-year time jump between the first movie and the second one, and I don't know, that just didn't really sit that right with me.
I think because for me, it allows the characters to grow up. And that's what I love about this series. It is given the opportunity to allow these characters to not to experience more adult things in their life. It Hiccup's fear of not having his dragons to rely on and instead relying on himself is probably one of the my favorite parts about this movie. And my and I think I'm gonna close this off. My favorite thing about this movie is that it would have been the perfect end if DreamWorks didn't decide, oh, let's make another TV show. Let's make another TV show. Let's make this boring special.
The ending
No,
kind of reminds me of how Toy Story 4 ends, which a lot of people really didn't like. I personally think it was a good thing, but I don't know. It's just, to me, it does seem to kind of be the antithesis of what the entire series was trying to do, and it was like have humans and dragons exist alongside each other. It directly goes against everything that Hiccup and Toothless were fighting for in the first movie. And that just, I don't know. That's what makes it a weaker movie than the first one in my eyes.
I think Hidden World has done a lot to this franchise. And if it was the last movie, I would have been extremely happy with the entire series. Because I think it was a great note to end on. But they brought the dragons back, so who the hell cares?
Yeah. So, my number one best movie. You probably already know what it is.
Oh, hell,
It's
I already know what
Tangled.
it is.
It's Tangled. Like, finally, they take the fairy tale genre and they do it. I think it's their best, Disney's best fairy tale movie. I really do. Because they kind of didn't do Snow White very well. Cinderella, I'm sorry, Disney's Cinderella movie sucks. It doesn't focus on Cinderella enough. And then Sleeping Beauty is probably their best classic one. Uh, and then you have Beauty and the Beast, which is actually a fairly good movie too. But Tangled manages to balance romance, comedy, and action, and even fantasy brilliantly. It's wonderful that watching Eugene and Rapunzel's relationship develop, it doesn't, like, yes, it happens all in like a day or two, but it doesn't feel forced and super rushed because there's an actual progression throughout the movie. And then on top of that, they don't get married immediately at the end. They get, like, they very much tell you that it took years of work for them to be married. And then there's the TV show, which is just really awesome. A lot. I can understand not liking the art style of the TV show and of the sequel. I want to say short film, but it's like an hour long. Before Ever After, but I enjoyed it. The art style
Is
does
that it? Okay.
the art
Sure.
style did take a while to grow on me. Um, but yeah, I think that is everything. That is our opinions on the 10 best and worst movies that we have covered. But I will say I do have a dishonorable mention that we haven't really discussed. Uh, and it's Raya and the Last Dragon. It is a fun movie. I will give it that. The movie is fun. The action, the animation, it's great. The comedy is also really great. Where Raya and the Last Dragon fails is, well, first, it fails in its representation. Southeast Asians hate this movie because it tries to homogenize a cult, like multiple different cultures that have a lot of diversity and variance. It doesn't it really doesn't do a good job at representing cultures of Southeast Asia. It also doesn't do a good job at exploring its side characters very well at all. There's, like, I enjoy them. I think they're great. They needed more development. And then on top of that, the biggest flaw is its message. It is trying to push a message about trust, but it went too far, and instead, it seems to be sending a message about blind trust, which can actually be really harmful, especially to children, who are the main demographic of Disney movies.
Mhm.
And I
I
think
definitely would say that we would have refined our rating
if I
if we
had
could go
to,
back to this movie.
you know what? Like, I can't remember what I rated this movie last time. I think it was somewhere in the sevens. If I had to rate it now, it's probably a 5.8. Because it is
I think I could
still,
join you in
in
that.
my opinion, yeah, I
A
think
bit
it is
higher, but
still in
that
my,
around.
I think I think it is still, in my opinion, an enjoyable movie. It just has major problems that hold it back. But with everything being said, that is it for our special episode 100. It's a long one, but I wanted it to be a long one. Um,
Mhm.
so, with all that said, you can join us next week for Phineas and Ferb the movie, Candace Against the Universe, and Agent Carter Season 1. But until then, I've been Avery, that's been Lily, and watch movies.